We work so you can play.
MiniWarGaming's Warhammer Fantasy League Bat Rep.
Hey there, MiniWarGamers. Owen here from MiniWarGaming with Chris and John to bring you another game in the Warhammer Fantasy League. 2,500 points. This time it's Orcs and Goblins up against the Ogres. And we haven't rolled off for what scenario they're doing yet, but we'll show you the armies and we'll get this started.
And here we have the Ogres and the Goblins deployed. And basically the Ogres are all lined up on the one side, the Goblins here, of course, are on the other. We've got the Giant in the middle. We're using that giant building as the watchtower. And so, thanks to Skarsnik and his little pet there, he had to roll for all of his units, and on ones they wouldn't show up on the first turn, so a few of his units here off in the far left, those guys did not show up, which is a big deal because one of his large creatures didn't. But we've got some Mournfang, we've got the Iron Stonehorn, that's it. And then we've got the two little dogs, we've got a big unit of Iron Guts with a bunch of his characters in there, a couple wizards, a couple Iron Bellies, and then he's got two units of, or rather one unit of 3 Ogre Warriors in the Watchtower right now. And they're just going to hang out inside. Over here we've got the Orcs and Goblins. And first thing, we've got a Mangler Squig, nice giant one. We've got a big unit of Night Goblins with Skarsnik. And then they've got Netters and a couple of Fanatics you can see creeping around in the back. We've got a Doomdiver Catapult. We've got a giant horde of Savage Orks. And they've got a Black Orc BSB as well as a Orc Shaman in the unit. And then we've got a large, see there's the BSB and the Shaman's on the end, he's level 4. We've got a Giant, and then over at the far end here we've got another Mangler Squig and then a large unit of Black Orcs. Those guys in the middle are just placeholders, there are actually more Black Orcs. We've got a little Goblin hero on a wolf, and then another Doomdiver Catapult. And that's basically it. The Orcs and Goblins have turn 1 because the Ogres did get to keep the Watchtower, so he charges in, rolling off for his Animosity, see if anybody freaks out, and they don't roll Animosity, so that's basically it. The Mangler Squig takes off 3d6, moving towards the enemy here, and he has control over which direction it goes until it hits a unit. As soon as it does, it just starts going in random directions because it's just going berserk. But until then, he can at least point them where he wants them to go. So he marches forward with his Savage Orks, getting them all up as close as he can, or at least as far up as he can right now. Moves up with all of his Goblins, and of course moves up with his Black Orcs marching forward as well. Because I guess Orcs seem to think that they can just beat up Ogres, and they're certainly going to try. And so here we go, Magic Phase, they roll a nice solid 8, rolling the channels, he doesn't get any, they don't get any. And so here we go, trying to dispel, and he does. Basically he was trying to do the Foot of Gork, now he's going to do the Hand of Gork, and he actually tries to do it on himself. Hand of Mork. Hand of Gork or Hand of Mork? It's one of the two. It's a hand of either Gork or Mork. And so he gets to move his unit 5d6. He rolls gigantic and then ends up being able to move them right up in front of those Ogres. So that's where they're going to do. Firing the Doomdiver Catapult, and it does deviate a little bit, but it does correct by a d6, and so he corrects it, and he decides that he's actually going to hit the dog with the 4-inch correction, and he just kind of does 1 wound to it. And so it lives after he did 5 hits, but it happens. Fires the other Doomdiver Catapult, which misses but corrects itself by 5, and so it hits the Mournfang. Gets 5 hits on 4s to wound, or 3s to wound, I believe it is. He does 2 wounds, putting him down to 1 wound left. Combat here between the Giant and the Ogres. The Giant rolls off on the chart. He's going to hit him with his club, does an initiative check, and he passes it, so he doesn't get thudded with the club. And now here we go, we've got the Ogres attacking. Forced to hit, 6s to wound. And so here we go, 6s, and he doesn't get any. And now the Giant basically just steps away because he won combat, but they're stubborn, and so they just sit there. And so he takes an inch off and just stands right there. Ogre turn begins, and obviously he's going to charge in right away with his, well, first he charges with the little hound, then he charges in with his big unit of Ogres. They don't get the Ogre charge, but they're all there. This guy, he was debating if he wanted to charge, he decides not to. Does a test to try and march with his hound, but he fails it and then fails the reroll because it is only leadership 4 and does not get his general's inspiring presence. The other ogres all start showing up, his beasties kind of move back, and he actually moves away from the Mangler Squig. I'm not sure what he was doing here. I understand they are like really nasty and you don't want to walk into them, but I mean, gotta do something about them. So he's trying to cast the Curse of Anra here on the big unit of Goblins, which goes off, and so if they move, they're all going to take dangerous terrain, and they're all -1 to hit. And that's basically what happened over there. Now he's trying to cast Wild Form on himself to get a buff there, but the Orcs and Goblins want none of that, and so they dispel it. Now he's taking gunshots at the Mangler Squig. He's got a few shots coming out of the Lead Belchers, but they're needing like 6s to hit and 4s to wound, so they don't do anything to it. And now he tries shooting his big ballista on top of his horse at the other Mangler Squig, which hits, and then he needs a 6. Nope, not quite enough, and only does 1 wound to it. And so it goes down to 2 wounds now. And now he tries to shoot it with the other catapult, or the other shot, which misses. And now here comes the catapult landing on top of the Mangler Squig, which deviates by a bunch and misses as well. So here we go, the close combat gets ready to start off, and we've basically got the Ogres attacking the Goblin, or the Orcs, rather. So he's got the first champion who's going because inside 6 inches of that monstrous creature there, the Thunder Tusk, you only get Always Strike, or you get Always Strike last, but only your enemy does. And so all those Orcs that are on the edge there, they're all going down to Always Strike last, which puts them on par with the other guys. But the Orcs do get to attack, because they get, a few of them are not in it, because it's not a unit by unit, it's a model by model, so the guys in it directly are affected, but for the most part they're alright. So the Black Orc got to attack, and now a number of these guys are going to get to attack. He's already lost 2 Goblins due to impact hits, or 2 Orcs rather, thanks to impact hits. And so here we go, tons of attacks with the frenzied Savage Orks, and they are strength 4 on the charge, or strength 5 on the charge, because they have Choppa, or on the first round of combat. So he gets a large number of hits and a large number of wounds here, or at least we're rolling off on the wounds here for the second round of attacks, and he kills like 3 Ogres off the break. And now the other guys here, they always strike last, but we're just going to do them now. So anyone killed at this point will get another attack. And so he puts him down to 2, and another one of them dies, and so he killed another Ogre. We'll just move him over. Yeah, because we had a bit of a debate there, because he actually didn't notice that another Ogre had been killed, because he did a ridiculous number of wounds. I mean, I'd never actually played against Savage Orks, and you get to see what they do right here. And so the Ogres attack back, they've got their great weapons, and the Orcs all have War Paint, which gives them a ward save. And so the Orcs and Goblins make their saves, and only one of them dies. But now he gets to stomp, does a few stomps, he makes more of his saves, only losing 1 more Orc, and then attacks, but that's basically it. He passes his morale check, and so the Ogres did not flee after losing a ton of guys, thanks to the fact that they have the Crown of Command. Moves up his Mangler Squig, heading in towards the combat. He's going this way with his Mangler Squig, trying to clip the side of that Saber-Tooth Cat, which he does, and so it takes a couple hits and dies. But now that Mangler Squig is going to go whatever way it feels like. That one died after not realizing that he got swept to the other side of the table. There aren't any charges, first off, and he moves up with his little Goblin on a wolf, moving him in front just to kind of mess up charge lanes as he brings up his Black Orcs, trying to get closer to get him in a better position so they can fight later. And so here we go, moving up, and right there. The Goblins here, so we move into the magic phase, which the Ogres decide they're going to use the Hell Heart, which makes everybody within d6 times 5 has to take a miscast. And of course the Orc guy is right beside the guy who's using that. So he does a miscast, rolls an 8, so everybody takes strength 6 hits on the Orc side, all the guys who can generate power dice. So he doesn't take a wound with his main guy, but the Goblin does take a wound. And now he loses d6 power dice, which makes it far less useful. And any spells that he tried to cast were dispelled. As we move into the Orcs and Goblins shooting now, trying to fire those Doom Diver catapults. It went backwards, but it corrects and hits him, does a few wounds, and so he's got to make his armor save, which he doesn't actually have, and so he's down to 5 wounds. Firing another one, aiming for the Mournfang once again, and this one just misses all out. Giant fight against the Ogres here. Giant didn't do really anything. The Ogres attack back, hitting on 4s, wounding on 6s, because it is rather tough being a Giant after all. And so 6s to wound, and he doesn't get any, or 5s rather, not 6s. But he failed his save, and so the Giant takes a wound, and is down to, I believe, 4 after that. But the Ogres lose the combat once again. They are stubborn though, and so they stay. And the Giant takes a step back. So here we go, the close combat once again between the Orcs and the Ogres in the center here. The Iron Guts against the Savage Orks. And so here we go, the Black Orc attacks, failing his save, but he makes his ward save, and now the rest of them are attacking. There's basically a challenge going on between the BSB and the other BSB. But he attacks back, does 2 wounds, and does 2 wounds to their BSB, and drops him down to, I think, 1 wound left. The Ogres have tons of wounds, just innately. And does fail his armor save, and fails his ward save, and so he's down another wound, thanks to the stomp. The Orcs all attack now. These are the ones that are not inside of the aura that's reducing their strength, but he does get a 6-up save now because they lose a little bit of strength. So he failed 6 saves. Now the rest of these guys, they're going to get to attack because basically everyone's going on the same time. So the heroes always strike last Orcs, and there's still tons of attacks, still easy to wound. They've got 6-up saves on the Ogres, which he fails a bunch, and loses 2 more of his Ogres, and it's just ridiculous how many guys these Orcs and Goblins can just chew through. Normally when you hit a big unit of Ogres, it takes forever for them to go away, but these guys, they not only are killing them all, even though they have great weapons and 2s to wound, he still has a 5-up save, so he's only losing like 6 or 7 per turn instead of like 10 or 11. And so he loses a few more, but the Ogres lose their combat, so we move into the Ogres' turn, the charge begins, he gets his Thunder Tusk into the combat. The Stonehorn decides that it's going to charge, or at least test a frenzy, and he does not charge in the end. He decided not to after making his frenzy check. The Saber-toothed Cat moves up, and then he fires off a Fanatic because he has to fire a Fanatic, and then the rest of the Fanatics get thrown off, and they all move up in whatever direction they can. Basically, they're headed towards the back of those Orcs. We had to roll off to see if he actually killed it after the last time when he didn't kill it with the Doom Diver, and so it actually didn't die. It only took 1 wound. Because we didn't really catch that. Tries to cast Curse of Vanner here on the giant unit of Orcs here, the Ogres that is, and it does go off on a miscast, but it does go off. And so he rolls to see what happens to his guys. He gets a small template over top of his head, wounding 3 of his regular guys, which basically kills that last Ogre there. And another wound on the champion and it's Banner that goes next. It's Musician, Banner, Champion. And then he does another wound, killing off his own Tyrant. And anyway, they're in combat, so he loses his own guy thanks to that, because it is a small blast, strength 10 over top of him. Rolling for the other Butcher, he takes a wound, and the other guy does not take a wound, but all in all, it was bad news for the Ogres, because they lost their Stubborn, and so they're going to be stuck in that combat. Fires away with his Lead Belcher, shooting at the giant squig there, does 1 wound to it, and it basically sits there. Shooting his catapult now, or his ballista, at the other squig, and it does do a wound. It does D3 wounds. And so basically he needs to roll a 4+. He gets it, and so that is the end of the Mangler squig. Combat begins here now, and we've got the Orcs attacking the unit now, trying to finish off the what's left of these Ogres after they've lost so many of their own guys. And so he fails a bunch of saves. The other 2 Ogres go down. He's down to just his characters now. And he's down to 4 wounds. The other one's down to, I believe, 2. And so everyone attacks, the Ogres get to attack anyway, and 1 wound was done, and he failed to save, because he only has a 5-up, and so another Orc dies. We do the attacks from the monstrous creature coming in from the side, the Thunder Tusk here, and he doesn't do a few wounds, but the Orcs still have a ward save, and so even if he does do a wound that would normally out-and-out kill them, it doesn't necessarily. The Orcs attack back, doing 3 wounds, and it kills the first one of the Ogres. Now he does an attack against the Thunder Tusk with his Savage Ork, which does not do a wound, which is to be expected. I mean, the rest don't do any wounds either, but we do leadership checks. Fails his leadership check, or does his stomp, but kills another one. And now we have to do all the leadership after this Thunder Stomps here. So the Thunder Tusk attacks, getting 4 Thunder Stomps, does 4 wounds. He's got a 4 5-up saves, and he does pass all 4 of them, 6, 6, 5, 5. The Ogres fail their leadership, and they decide to run. So they're on the run, and he lets them flee because he's going to try and pursue after the Thunder Tusk, who is also going to be fleeing. So he runs clean off the board, and then Thunder Tusk runs 4. The Orcs and Goblins pursue 6, and so they move 6 that way. They have to now roll for the Curse of Vanner here because it's all dangerous whenever they move. And so he has to roll a whole bunch of dangerous terrains, which is on a 1, so it's not that likely he's going to fail him, but I mean, it was a lot of dice to roll, and he ends up losing more guys from that than he did in the last round of combat. But Orcs and Goblin turn begin. He charges in with his Savage Orks, who make their charge and now hit that unit of Ogres, and which means because they do have the Curse of Vanner here up, they all have to do that dangerous terrain once again. And so there's another like 21 of them there that have to do saves. These Goblins charged in and made it into combat with the other Saber-toothed Cat, and basically now he's rolling for his saves and his dangerous terrain. So he takes a wound on his Sorcerer. The rest of the guys, they take a bunch of failed saves, or a bunch of wounds, and he fails a whole bunch more 5-up ward saves. And so this unit's slowly getting killed off just because of Curse of Vanner here, which, that's pretty hilarious. Magic is powerful in 40k, or in fantasy. We all know that. And these guys charging in, they do make their charge, or rather they wanted to make their charge, but failed it. And that's basically what happens. Which way does the Mangler Squig go? There wasn't really an arrow on that scatter dice we were using, so we just re-rolled until we got an arrow. That way it would go somewhere, because it's supposed to go whatever the direction is on the top with the hit symbol, but that one doesn't have one. And so he just kind of moves off and heads towards the forest. The Goblin Fanatics now spinning around. Once again, he rolls a hit, so we just re-roll it, and he gets an arrow, which sends him barreling that way and doesn't really hit anybody. The other one rolling off, and he goes doubles, which kills him, and hits a wall, which kills him really good. So he's dead, and that's the end of him. Magic phase, he does get a channel off. The ogres don't have any mages left, and so basically he tries to Hand of Gork those guys, dispels it, no throwing models around. That's how that goes. And now he does have to do the wounds against his sorcerer and the other orc there. And so does he take a wound? Yes, he's got a 5-up board save, which he makes, and the other random savage boy takes a wound and has a 5-up board save, but he fails it, and so yet another savage orc is killed. Shooting the Doom Divers now right in the middle of the Mournfang, which is basically a hit regardless. It corrects itself, but he does do a wound and kills the last one, or finally kills one of those guys. Shooting the other Doom Diver, it misses by 8, and so it can't correct enough to get in. The Giant now fighting against the Ogres there. Just awful how bad this Giant is at killing these Ogres. He's just not been able to do like any wounds. He steps back and still fails to kill. The fight now between the Saber-Tooth Dog and the unit, and basically the Scarstick, the Goblin Champion attacks, and he does do a wound and kills it. But the dog does get to do his attacks on his way out and didn't do anything. Oh no, he didn't, because the Scarsnick was higher initiative. But yeah, the Goblins all move forward, getting ready, because they're going to try and take the tower, seeing as the Giant has failed horribly at it. Because so long as the Ogres own the tower, it doesn't matter how the rest of this battle is going, because they win. And so here we go. The attack against the Ogres goes, and he does get rerolls to hit now, because he did get the spell that basically gave them rerolls to hit. The Ogre attacks back now. He decides that he's going to go for the BSB just for spite, but he only gets 3 hits. There you go, never mind. I say only. And then he needs 5s to wound. Nothing. And that's that. And so he gets more attacks with the other, the Black Orc decides he's using his great weapon, which fails to wound, but this Ogre is now on the run after he fails his leadership, which he wasn't going to pass. And so he stomps, makes his save, they decide they're going to run, fails his leadership, runs like 2 inches, and then the Orcs overrun right into the unit, or right into the creature here. And here we go, once again, doing the Curse of Vanry here, so we've got to roll Dangerous Trains for everybody, and fail it. He's got to make a 5-up board on his Sorcerer again, and he does. And the rest of them fails a bunch more, and fails a bunch more saves. So he's lost another 2, 3, 4 of them, I think, in the end there. Ogres begin their turn. He charges in with his Mournfang going up into the unit of Black Orcs. These guys turn around and decide they're going to try and shoot up the Goblins, seeing as he doesn't have a magic phase now. Both of his wizards are dead. Close combat begins between Thundertusk, or not Thundertusk, this is Stoneheart, and the unit of Savage Orks. Stoneheart attacks, gets to go first, and he makes every one of his ward saves. Except for one. Almost every one of his ward saves. The Orcs and Goblins attack back. These are Savage Orks anyway. And they get tons of attacks, wounding on like 6s. But he fails almost all of his saves with only 1 wound not saved. And yeah, bad news for him, because the Black Orc now attacks with his great weapon and kills it. And so he basically hacks that to death, hacks it down. He does have to pursue, because that's how it works. But thankfully the Curse of Vanry here is finally gone. And so he doesn't lose the last of this unit to that curse. Close combat begins between the Mournfang and the Black Orcs. And the Mournfang get their impact hits, which kill off 4 of them. Mournfang riders, or the mounts themselves, get to attack, because of course the Black Orcs are going to use their great weapons, and they attack, killing even more of them. The Dragonhide banner lets him reroll 1s, and so he gets a bunch more hits with the riders themselves, and it kills them as well. Bam. And now the riders themselves attack, doing 2s to wound, rerolling 1s. So he gets another 6 wounds, so it kills another 6 more Black Orcs. So he's lost like 15 or 16 of them or something crazy like that on the charge here. But the Orcs attack back, and they do have great weapons, but he rolls awfully and only kills like 1 Mournfang. And the other one takes 2 wounds with 1 wound left. Then he gets his Thunder Stomp for another 2 more, and 2 more Black Orcs get killed, because they are strength 5, and he's only got a 5-up heavy armor save, and so he loses 2 more wounds. Leadership check, he does pass thanks to being stubborn, because he does still have the extra rank, but barely. The goblins charge in, going into the building here, seeing if they can succeed where everyone else failed. The Mangler Squig goes off random directions and finally leaves the board, and so he's destroyed. The little goblin turns around. He does a leadership check to try and turn around his unit of Savage Orks who do, and so they can face rolling off the magic phase. See if he can try and mess up their unit's ability. So he leaves the unit with his Savage Ork here, headed off. He was going to move it anyway, and then he decided not to. He's going to leave it up to the goblins. Shooting the Doom Diver, it corrects and hits that unit there, does 2 hits and 1 wound, and so he does 1 wound to one of the Blood Belchers. They have 3 wounds each, and so they're not really that worried about it. It's a rather powerful unit for only 4 guys across. You have to remember that they do have 12 wounds, so it's basically like a 12-man unit for a normal army. But anyway, the goblins all attack, and they're finally able to do a few wounds here, putting him down, or basically killing that one and wounding the other one. And the other guy's attack, he rolls to see if his netter goes off, which we should have done at the beginning, because if he rolls badly, it might actually mess himself up. But in this case, he does not, and so the rest of them attack, and he gets him down to 1 wound. The ogre gets to do his attacks back, killing one of the goblins, which is nothing. Loses combat by a bunch, and actually fails his leadership check. So he gets booted out of the tower. He can't pursue him, of course, but he comes out whatever side of the tower that he likes. He was going to come out the far side, going in towards the Black Orcs. Decides instead he's going to go out towards his own side of the board. So he gets out, and then he runs off from there, moving like 4 inches, and just kind of hangs out in front of the tower. Combat begins between the Mournfang and the Black Orcs, and the Mournfang once again are just devastating these Black Orcs. And the Riders attack, killing a bunch more, putting him down to, I think, 1 orc left. Nope, 3 orcs left. The orcs attack, they get a few wounds, killing off that one. There's 1 Mournfang left. He's got 1 orc left. Stomps, killing another one. The orcs lose combat, but they barely stay. And so here we go, moving into the ogre's turn. He fails to rally with his last ogre there, and he runs. The lead belchers charge into the back here. It should have been the other way around. He should have charged and then tried to rally. But we didn't mind because we knew what was going on. So they charge into the goblins. The last combat here now between the orcs and them. He decides to attack with just a sword or 2 choppas. So he attacks, gets some wounds, does fail 1 save, and the Mournfang dies to the last Black Orc. So those Mournfang definitely made their points back because they nearly wiped out that entire unit of Black Orcs. Some good rolling, and the fact that Black Orcs don't really have saves really kind of did it for them. The Lead Belchers now trying to take, or attacking the Goblins. Goblins do get to go first, but they're Goblins, and so they aren't doing very good at it. I think they did like 1 wound. The Champion attacks because they did get to make way, and so they get to do their attacks. But we realized he has a great weapon, so we don't roll him, but we might as well, because why not? And so they attack. This is the surviving goblins in the back rank anyway. But the ogres get to attack back, having the goblins done next to no wounds. And they get tons of hits, tons of wounds. 6-up save on the goblins. Fails 2 of them, so 2 goblins die, which nothing. That's nothing. So here comes the great weapon goblin. He gets 2 hits, and he does do a wound, and so he kills one of these ogres. And that's basically how that goes. The ogres try and stomp. They don't get any kills.
So here we are, handshake. It is a goblin and orc victory, even though they got like massacred in those last few turns. But it was a lot closer in kills than it looked like it was going to be. But in the end, it is an orcs and goblins victory because they own the tower, or will soon enough. Stay tuned for more games from the Warhammer Fantasy League. Happy wargaming.
Click below to join the MiniWarGaming Vault and get a 7-day free trial. Inside you'll get access to many more battle reports and painting tips, all associated at MiniWarGaming and wargaming in general. Happy wargaming.